Hello everybody, my name is and welcome to my channel, It's All in You. So today I want to review a little bit about how we sort of ended up being in a situation where a lot of people feel quite disempowered a lot of the time. And I think this really comes from a very long-standing myth that's been perpetuated by, for lack of a better term, the powers that be, to basically tell us that we don't have any power. So I want to kind of review a little bit about that, and then a bit about how we can actually find our power, because it's in all of us, and that's really the way to empower ourselves and be happier. So basically, what I want to say is I want to debunk the myth that we don't have power, and tell everybody watching this that we all do have power. It's very much there. And if you look at history, the establishments have always been afraid of us figuring that out. So I don't know where that came from or who started it, but I think if you look throughout time, it's very obvious that fear is there. And I think a lot of us are somehow aware that something is missing. I think what really comes back to me is that really famous scene from The Matrix, where Morpheus says to Neo that there's something like a splinter in your mind. There's something in you and you realize that things are not as they should be.
You feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad.
There's something inside of you that's telling you this isn't all there is, and something is not right. So I think a lot of us who are interested in expanding our consciousness, this is something that we know on some kind of intuitive level, like Neo. I'm not going to pretend that I have the answers that Morpheus has or that we're in some kind of matrix, but I just wanted to draw a kind of parallel, because I think that's a feeling that a lot of us can relate to. We feel there's more, we feel we're not being told the whole story. We think there might be more even to ourselves. And so I think this is very much true. And I think that's why The Matrix was such a successful movie, because it was a kind of an allegory to tell us something that's true, a feeling that a lot of us have. I think also, I think the other thing that's really important about The Matrix is that concealing people's power or keeping them kind of in the dark was very deliberate. And I think that's also something that's happening. I think also if you look at the history of organized religion, it's very obvious that somebody in power does not want us to know kind of the divine that's in all of ourselves. And I think what's something that I always found amazing, even as a kid, before I understood much about reality, and of course I still have much to learn, as all of us do, but what I found really interesting was thinking about the fact that of all the combinations that I could have been, or that any of us could have been, you know, our parents got together, and out of the thousands of genetic combinations that could have come up, it was us, it was you, it was me. We're the only ones that came out of that, which I think is incredible. And I think that's something always to think about, is that you are special. There's a reason you're here. There's a reason you were the one that came out of all of the possible combinations that could have happened. And there's reasons, you know, of course your parents could have gotten with somebody else. There could have been a totally different combination of genetics that made you, but it's you. So it's you, and you're something special that I think all of us need to remember. There's a divine reason that we're here. There's something special in all of us. I think religion has tried to kind of dull that down a little bit, organized religion. I don't want to say everything about organized religion is bad. I think there's a lot of good in it. I think a lot of them started from a good place, but I think the messages of a lot of them were quite twisted and corrupted. I'm really down the rabbit hole of Paul Wallace's books right now and his views on the Old Testament, so I'll put that in the comments. But I think, you know, organized religion, it can give you a community, it can give you something to believe in, it can give you answers to some of the big questions, but I think also it can really kind of keep you asleep. And I think telling people that the only way that they can save themselves, or the only way that they can really access power or even magic, that you would want to call it, I think the telling people that religion is the only way they can do it is a way of scaring them. It's a way of keeping people down. And if you even look through the ages of the witch hunts, I think it's very clear that anybody who tapped into some kind of power, anybody who accessed their inner knowing, was completely vilified. Because I think they were so afraid of that, because once people realized this, of course they could see that they didn't really need the clergy, they didn't need the status quo, that they could be on their own. And I think there's also a lot of gender dynamics about why it was, in most cases, women targeted for that. But that's a whole other structure of, you know, power power and oppression that is maybe outside the scope of this video. But there's some really interesting material on that, in terms of why witches were really targeted, because they were considered very subversive figures, a specific group of people that kind of tapped into this at a particular time and place. So there's some really interesting books written on that. I would recommend In Defense of Witches by Mona Chollet. I hope I said that right. And also Caliban and the Witch by Silvia Federici, if any of you are interested in reading a little bit more about that. But I think that's also one of the great kind of ways that people's power has been kind of oppressed, and people have been kept from knowing it. And also, some of the organized religions, like especially the Abrahamic religions, they really tote this fear-based belief that if you don't follow them, if you don't do exactly what they want, if you try to tap into any other sources of power, it's evil, it's the devil, it's something bad, and you're going to face eternal damnation. So they really just try to absolutely scare you out of realizing that you're powerful. So this is one of the ways that this has been perpetuated throughout history. Maybe not so relevant anymore, because I think a lot of people are turning away from organized religion in some parts of the world, not everywhere. And obviously some people are really going back to that because I think they want some answers to the big questions. I think also one of the other big lies is basically ridiculing anyone who challenges the status quo. So that, you know, in the past that happened with anybody who challenged organized religion, but now it kind of happens with anybody who challenges like the scientific establishment. And that's something that's really strong. First of all, I want to say that I think the scientific method is a fantastic one. Making a hypothesis, testing it empirically, having people peer review it, having people double-blind review papers, I think that method is absolutely fantastic. I hope we continue with that forever. But what I want to say is that I think that in any time that there is a source of power, there's people that are going to try to take that over and co-opt and coerce things in the way that they want. So I would really recommend, if you're interested in this really, maybe take a look at some of Dean Radin's material. He's a scientist who's done a lot of work on psi phenomenon. He has a book called Real Magic, which is really fascinating. And he's one academic among many who have basically been on the fringe because he's kind of dared to challenge the scientific status quo in terms of psi phenomena, which is often kind of academic suicide. But he's not the only one. Russell Targ from the Stargate Project also did that. But I think it's important to note that the scientific paradigm, especially in terms of our own power and our medical abilities to kind of heal our own bodies or understand more, I think is a bit incomplete. And I don't want to tell anyone not to consult conventional medicine or conventional doctors. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that they're wrong. But what I'm saying is I think that narrative is incomplete. And I think it's incomplete on purpose, because if you look at things like remote viewing or Reiki or all of these kind of things, there's a reason that they work. And the scientific establishment, or at least certain individuals within it who are holding a lot of power, don't want you to explore these other things. So I think that that's another way that the myth that we have no power is being unfortunately perpetuated. That kind of segues into one of the other great lies is that we're all separate. So I think those of you who maybe have had mystical experiences, anybody who's tried psychedelics like ayahuasca, for example, most people who've kind of gone through a bit of a spiritual awakening understand that there is no separation. That's an illusion. We're all one consciousness. Also quantum entanglement. That's something that even Einstein believed in. He called it spooky action at a distance. But basically it's the understanding that we are all connected, and that's why two cells, even just looking at them or thinking about them from a distance, causes them to change. I think there's something also called the double slit experiment. I'll put that in the comments to prove that. So that's also one of the lies that we've been told, that we're all separate, that we're all alone, that we're all isolated, and we don't have power. And that's a very disempowering and a very scary thought. And then that kind of makes us turn to organized religion or turn to science. Well, please give us the answers. Please save us, rather than realizing that we actually have that power in ourselves. So that's also something quite sad that keeps us in this myth that we're not powerful. I think another way that we are kept in this kind of disempowered state of not realizing that we have power is that really the society that we're in, pretty much financially and in terms of social status, rewards people that keep the status quo. So it's, if you want to have a comfortable life, you know, the house, the car, the marriage, respect in your community, it's very difficult to go against the grain. It's really, really hard to do that. So you're taking a really big risk by challenging the narrative. And most people are afraid of doing that because in the paradigm we have, with most of the world being capitalist, if you financially fail, the consequences are extremely serious. So that's also something that keeps us quiet, and people that do realize they're powerful, or that everyone is powerful, like maybe myself, it's difficult for us to speak out. So that's also something that keeps us down. But I am really inspired to see that there's more and more people that are willing to speak up and talk a little bit more about the experiences that they've had, and even scientific research that's being done, for example, by like somebody like Dean Radin, to understand how powerful we really are. So now that I've gone through a little bit of the myths and the ways that we're kind of kept in this idea that we don't have any power, maybe I'll talk a little bit about how you can tap into that power that you have, that everyone has. So how do I find my power? That's the next big question. And I think what's important to note is it's not something you need to go out there and search for. That's something I myself did. I studied a lot of different religions. I traveled all over the world looking for something. I thought I would find the answer outside myself somewhere. And eventually I realized I'm not going to. I just have to remember something that I forgot or that I didn't want to look at. So that's what everyone kind of has to do. There's a voice inside of you. It's always there. We're kind of rewarded by always going into the mind, always taking the path of conventional wisdom. And as I said before, that's not bad, but it's not everything. So if we're always going into our into our mind and not our heart, we're kind of missing half of the picture. So that usually gets socialized out of us very early on, but it is possible to unlearn that. So what I would suggest is we can meditate. If people don't have time or that's not suitable for some people, just start listening to that inner knowing. I think a lot of people have had these kind of experiences where, you know, you had a feeling about a person or about a situation, but you didn't listen to it at the time. And then later on, you thought, wow, I should have listened to that feeling. So I think all of us kind of have that ability. And I think it's also just remembering our being. We're always going to be. That's it. Just remember your being. And that's all. So I think that's another way of remembering your power, tapping into it. And I think that's how we're going to kind of advance ourselves and realize that we are powerful. So that's where I would suggest any of you start if you're looking to learn more about yourself and your own power. I hope this video was useful for you, and I hope to see you again.